Your relationship with Gene Simmons, who is not your brother, but he's frequently cast as a near brother. The two of you have been close for well over half a century.
Yeah, yeah.
So when and how did that happen? Tell me the story.
I was playing with a guitar player in Washington Heights, which is interestingly the neighborhood that I first grew up in. 211th Street and Broadway was where I was originally from. I found a guitar player who I was playing with, and one day I went over to his house, his apartment, and there was another guy there, and he said, "This is Gene, he writes songs, and this is Stan." At that time, I was Stanley. I still am, only now it's my last name. But I said, "Yeah, I write songs," and Gene said, "Oh, play me one." And I sat down and played him a song, which incidentally wound up on our first album, and he played me one song, which didn't. So I famously didn't take to him immediately, and when Steve, this other guitar player, said, "Why don't we have a band together?" I said, "Well, you can play with him, or you can play with me, but you're not going to play with us." Well, here we are 50 some odd years later, and I'm very fortunate to have been on that path with him.
So what's the key, what's the core of that friendship and collaboration?
Trust. I think that a great partnership is based on understanding its limitations. If you don't expect something from someone that they aren't equipped to give you, you won't be disappointed. And perhaps the times where I've been disappointed in Gene were times where I really should have said, that's not on his list. You know, that's not something that he excels at. So does he do things that I question? Does he say things that I don't want to align myself with? Does he behave in certain ways? Yeah, but that's not here or there. The core of what we have is a work ethic and a bond that's built on time. That's the amazing thing. There is no substitute in a relationship for time. You know that yourself. When you meet someone, there may be potential, but nothing comes of it without experience and seeing how each one of you respond to crises, to victories, to defeats, and that's what Gene and I have been through together. So the rest, we have totally different lives. Gene's a great guy. He says a lot of controversial things. I take things that he says with a grain of salt, and I think others should too.
And you once said that you could stand in your front yard and see his ego from where you were standing.
That's pretty on target. But pragmatism, I'm so lucky with what I have. To bitch about what could be different or better would be like winning the lottery and complaining about taxes. I have a life that I couldn't even anticipate or ever work towards. I have 4 amazing children who, there are times they must think I'm crazy, but I'll walk over to one of them and go, "I can't believe you're my child." So I'm blessed to have incredible children. I have a wife that for 16 years now has been there. As I was saying with relationships, you get to strengthen and build a foundation based upon the crises and the good times, and she's never let me down. I think the only surprise with Erin is that there are no surprises. She is rock solid.
Most people know Kiss, one of the best known rock and roll bands in the history of rock and roll, and that's saying a hell of a lot.
I'm flattered to hear you say that.
As a band, what is Kiss?
I think Kiss started as the band we never saw. As someone who went to rock concerts, I felt cheated. I saw bands that felt that they were doing me a favor by being there, but I paid for a ticket. I saw bands that looked like they just rolled out of bed, but I paid for a ticket. It pretty much was like analogous to going into a market and giving money and coming out with an empty sack. We wanted to be the band we never saw. And what I've really found in life is that if I don't second guess the public. And if I just address my needs, I address the needs of lots of people, whether it's Kiss, whether it's art, whether it's Puma shoes. When I say what would make me happy, invariably it makes other people happy. So Kiss was a touchstone for a lot of people. It was a wake-up call to audiences of what they should never accept less than.
When Kiss was becoming popular, we're talking now early 70s, that's really when it began to build. It was fairly common for you to be damned by all kinds of people. It was demonic, satanic. What did you think about it at the time?
I have to take a deep breath.
And was there some truth to it?
There was no truth to it. And rock and roll has always been feared in some way or another. But I never lost the irony that the person pointing the finger is usually the person who winds up with a hooker in a cheap hotel, being tempted by the devil, found out by his parishioners. So the religious zealots or the Jimmy Swaggarts and those kind of people, we were just a target to make them look more important. And I always say, always look at the person who's doing the accusing. I'm still here and a lot of them aren't. But I've never painted myself to be anything other than who I am.
That's ironic for you to say that I've never presented myself as anything other than who I am. But for years, you wore, in public at least, always a mask, always made up and described yourself as Star Child. So how do you reconcile that, saying, I've never presented myself as anything other than what I am?
Because that is part of who I am. And in the golden age of film, you never saw Marilyn Monroe with the flu. You never saw Betty Grable. You never saw any of these icons sick. You never saw them at their worst. And that's really what Kiss was about projecting something larger than life. And I've never seen what I wear on stage as a disguise, because when I took off the makeup in 1983, my persona didn't change. I was doing the same thing on stage. The makeup has always been a way to accentuate and magnify a part of who I am. So I don't think it's any different than someone wanting to show their best side. It wasn't false, it wasn't misleading. I am still the Star Child.